Hello, writers. This is Mrs. Harding, and I'm here to review the writing process with you as you are diving into writing your narrative. So, the first stage of the writing process is pre writing, and that is when you are brainstorming. So, you're thinking about all the different ideas of how you want your story to go, how your characters are going to act, what they're going to be named, what troubles they're going to have, how they're going to solve them. It's all of the just getting ideas down on paper. And in this stage, I really encourage you not to focus on writing incomplete sentences or being very critical about your different ideas. I would just suggest getting a pencil or typing on the computer and just making a list. Or if you're somebody who likes to make a web, you could do that too. But just get your ideas down on paper. It is not about making everything perfect. In fact, you might even cross off a lot of those ideas later and decide you want to do something different. That is completely fine. But the idea is just to get anything that comes into your mind about your story down on paper, and then you can figure out from there what of those ideas you're going to use and what you're not. For a lot of people, the pre writing stage can be one, if not the hardest stage because it's where you're starting with just a blank page and you're trying to figure it all out. So don't get discouraged if it's hard at first. It actually gets a lot easier as you go through the steps. This is probably the hardest step. If it's not the hardest, it's one of the hardest. So get your ideas down on paper. For this task, your job is to write a story about a hero, and you need to have a theme that you see in a lot of myths. So, a good place to start is thinking about the hero's journey. What are the common steps that a heroes go through? You can find the hero's journey in many of the lessons, including the first lesson of Unit 3. And then after you kind of think about those different steps and what ones do you want to include in your story, another thing to brainstorm about is theme. What's a theme that you want to explore more in your narrative story? So think about the different themes that we've studied in the different myths that we have read, and think about what theme you want to have in your story. Both of those two things will help you a lot in deciding what you want your story to be about. An example of a theme could be the struggle for power. So maybe you want to explore that. Maybe you want to explore like good versus evil. You can decide what you want to explore, but just make sure you have a theme that's going to be woven throughout your story. All right, the next stage in the writing process after you've brainstormed is drafting. This is when you put all your ideas and you actually do write them in complete sentences. You're not writing a list anymore. You're writing complete sentences and you're writing your ideas in order. So your story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. All right, this is when, again, your ideas are not in a list, they're in sentences. You might still have some spelling errors though, or maybe you forgot some capitals and periods. That's fine, but you are writing in sentences now in order. An idea here for you is when you're done is to read your story out loud just to yourself and note places where you stumble or maybe you use a certain word a few times or it doesn't really make sense. And then you know those are places you're going to want to go back and revise. Once you've done that and you feel like your draft is pretty solid, this is when it is a good time to ask a friend or a family member for some feedback. So maybe have a parent read through your draft and tell you where are areas that they were a little confused or some spelling mistakes they see and those kind of things. And don't get offended. I know it can be so hard because you put so much work into your draft, but don't get offended. Remember, they're there to try to help you improve your writing. All right. The next step then is to revise. This is to improve your writing. This is where you're actually moving sentences and words around. So you might decide, you know what, I actually think I'm going to start in a different part of the story. I'm going to totally change the beginning. Or, this section is kind of confusing, so I'm going to reword it so it makes more sense. Or maybe in a certain part, you're in someone's head too much, and it would be more interesting to add some dialogue and have the character talk to another character. So you might add dialogue there. Or maybe you want to add some more descriptive words. Like maybe your words are using a lot of the common words that everyone uses when they're talking, and it's kind of boring, so you want to add some more vivid language. Or maybe you want to add some more details just so that it's more interesting and the reader can follow along better. This also could be a part you might want to add some more details to make sure your theme is really clear so the writer or the reader knows what your theme is. Okay, so that's revising. It's moving the words and sentences around or adding some to improve your overall story. And then you move to editing. And editing is proofreading. This is when you're not even really reading so much sentence by sentence. You're looking more for spelling errors and capitalization errors and punctuation errors. Those things should be fixed first, and you could have an adult help you with that. Or if you've typed it, word processors often help you with that too. And then you want to reread and see, do your sentences make sense? It's very helpful to have an adult help you read through your work and point out things because as an author, you know what you're trying to say. So it's very easy to read it and have it make sense for you. But when somebody else reads it, it might not make a lot of sense for them. So it's very helpful to have an adult read and help you proofread. It doesn't mean they're correcting everything for you, but maybe there's highlighting or circling areas that don't make sense or words they know are misspelled, etc. And then the last stage is often the very easiest. Yay, you get to end with the easiest step. It is publishing or creating your final draft. This is when you are rewriting or retyping your essay or your, in this case, your story, your narrative, and you're doing it as neatly as you can if you're writing it or typing it neatly. And you're making sure that everything that you added in the revising section and everything that you fixed in the editing section are all fixed and perfect in your final published draft. And this is where you're also going to add a title and make sure you've also written that it's done by you. And this is where you get to share it. And I cannot wait to read your narrative. I'm sure it's going to be really interesting and so fun. If you have any questions about any of these steps, of course, email me. I am happy to help. And again, I just cannot wait to read your story. All right, go get to work, writers.